So what, you come here and think, well, I'm my fucking joke? Is that what you're doing?
No.
What are you making?
What's up, guys? Tom Fazio here. Let's talk about knife self-defense. I got a few comments over the last week. Thank you guys for letting me know some of the stuff that you think would be interesting to see on this channel. I'm going to hit some of that right now. A little bit of request for weapons discussions. This is going to be in particular about knife defense. There's other stuff that I might put together in terms of strategy, because some of the comments I made in one of the other videos was looking at bad strategies, and somebody had asked for, well, what would be your top 3, your top 5? I'm still thinking about that. The problem for me is that I've got years in this game, and I'm not always aware of the strategies that I'm implementing. There are broad categories, and maybe that's what I should focus on for the channel. But the challenge is that dealing in real life situations, which we'll try to look at here in a second, it's very difficult to go in with what you might consider a hierarchy or a few top things, because they're so dynamic, right? And you might need this for this and that for that as a general way of approaching, not just a technical solution, but general ways of interacting and dealing with a certain individual from a certain position. There could be hundreds of these. I mean, you might have hundreds of strategies that ideally get trained, and usually get trained through technical development, right? So you learn a technique, you maybe learn 5 techniques that have kind of a similar approach, and then from that, people will tend to abstract or even extract a specific hierarchical principle that governs, okay, well, actually, these 3 things do this. It seems to make sense. It works more often than not. Maybe this is a principle of engagement. And so that's how a lot of that is done. That being said, there might be meta principles that I think I can draw out after a bit. But so today, we're looking at knife defense. I've got 2 shitty videos to show you, and 2 awesome videos to show you. The first one is dealing with women's self-defense. These are god-awful. So let me play in. They're super quick. I'll quickly analyze their plausibility and the technique involved, and then I'll go on to contrast them. These 2 are from Expert Village, which I couldn't think of anything, I was saying Expert Village, more like Shit Village. I couldn't think of anything that would work, more like something else, but they're terrible. Like, all of these Expert Village tutorials should be burned. And this one's no different. I'm not going to call this guy's name out. I'm not sure. He does introduce himself, but I primarily want to look at the technique to contrast. But they do the job. So this first one here,
like this, and
the Sifu comes up. He's got a knife to the throat of a woman probably half his size.
This is showing the attacker that you're scared.
Raise your hands to make sure they know you're scared. That's rule number 1.
To grab the hand forward.
Grab the hand.
You grab, drop
drop. Notice how she dropped first with her neck onto the knife. Smart move.
Right. Again.
Okay.
Grab here. First thing she does is hands up.
Hands
Bring
up.
your hand closer, pulls it forward.
Pull it down.
Up, break the elbow.
Oh, break the elbow, hit the knee, chop.
All right.
It's that easy, folks. Just
close to the knife.
do some of that
The knife, pulls the knife hand.
chop suey shit.
Come in.
Yeah, this is a mess. The single best escape for this type of a scenario that I've seen, you'll find in Krav Maga and Jiu-Jitsu both. And it's generally, she's starting correctly, which is you want to cover, you want to distance yourself from the blade, you want to control the wrist, but generally speaking, to assume somebody half your size is going to be able to pull your arm forward, this is totally unreasonable. His arm is at a 90 degree. That's the strongest position for the arm to be in. And he's vertical, which means his lats and his traps are engaged to be able to tighten up as soon as she starts to yank. The chance of her pulling his arm away from her throat in this fashion, never going to work. So what happens in Jiu-Jitsu and what happens in Krav Maga, they'll create a little bit of distance, but this is not designed to get the arm that much away. You still want to keep it tight and control it. The next thing they'll do, if they can, there may need to be a foot stomp to get a little bit of positioning, but generally it'll be a stepping through and then a rotating in. Why? Because the guy's arm is already tense. He's going to be contracting and pulling it in. All you're doing is helping the knife into his own chest, sternum, solar plexus, anywhere in the torso. And then it's stab, stab, stab. Don't get me wrong, not encouraging anybody to go stab, stab, stab. I'm a pacifist, kind of. But this is just looking at the strategy of what's going on here. This is a disaster of a technique. And I'm going to get to why the scenario is absurd to begin with when we get to the third video. But let's hit the second one real quick. So in this one, we got the Sifu thrown in a straight shoot with a knife. Ever seen anybody do that? I haven't.
Coming in with your knee to the elbow.
So she parries, redirects.
Again, slow motion, you parry.
Parry.
You bring your hand over to grab. Twist the hand back.
It's that easy, folks. Grabs, rotates.
My thumbs are pointing together like a V.
We get it.
Pointing to my middle knuckle. This is going to lock up my wrist.
Oh, for Christ's sake. Okay.
Twist it backward.
That is not how you grab a wrist in a wrist lock. I don't know how this has gotten propagated through martial arts. I primarily see this in American martial arts. I may have missed it in other locales, but I've trained several systems of locking over the years. When you're dealing with a wrist lock, this type of an approach where the thumbs go to the middle, right, this way, and then the other one is on the other side, where you've got this thing going, you'll get guys that tell you, oh, just poke the thumbs into the pressure points, grind them in behind the bones in the back of the hand. If you hear this from your instructor, all locking and controlling advice that you're going to receive thereafter, turn the brain off. This is not effective locking in any way. The hand is not reinforced. Okay, pressing with the thumb and the fingers like this is an extremely weak lock that can actually be broken through very simply if he just rotates his hand, pushes forward, and it can also be pushed off with the other hand. There's no substance to it. More importantly, for herself to control the wrist, you don't have a grip of the hand. It's so easy, especially if the guy's sweaty, if his palms are big, it's so easy for your hand to slide off. You absolutely 100% need that webbing and that base across the entire hand. And this is not a good example on this thumb. Thumb needs to be wrapped. Don't stick your fingers inside, grabbing the meat of the hand, wrapping fully as a bare minimum. Then the other hand comes and presses and covers. Right? A good grab of the hand, especially if he's got a fucking knife, right? If he's got a knife, you need to wrap the shit out of that hand for complete control. So that's the first issue. The next issue is that she's parrying down. This may or may not be applicable, except that the knife has come into her center line and she's trying to parry to the outside. Knife strikes come so fast. You'll be lucky to get any hand on the person attacking you, let alone do a full redirection of parry. What I'll show you in 2 videos is that the guy drops down onto it, and this is smart because it gives you an opportunity to redirect, to shrimp the body away, and to stick to that opponent for a split second. Much smarter, and it's a way of reinforcing a natural proclivity or a natural reaction or reflex to attack that weapon, right? Well, as soon as you have to start incorporating and designing new types of patterning and movement into the body, this stuff takes decades to use. And when you're dealing with a live weapon like a knife, you need to use something so robust, so simple, so direct that it cannot fail, or at least is less likely to fail more often than not, right? So, parry, bad idea. The second thing, she's reaching over as if the guy's hand is going to stay. These stabs come in, I'm going to show you the next video. The guy stabs in crazy fast. He smothers the person. A technique like this would never, ever work, right? Next thing, going into the wrist lock. Now, I've talked in one of the other videos about wrist locks. I love locking, controlling techniques. I think they are one of the best ways to deal with weapons, assaults, and things like this. And one of the common kind of mantras, especially in Krav Maga, is you hear RCAT, redirect, control, attack, take away. The control factor is what allows you, let's say you get stabbed on the first one, right? The control factor is what allows you not to get stabbed a second time, or to at least make sure you're manipulating, that person's weapon hand, arm, body, and have control of the individual. Second thing, if you're doing a wrist lock, which I have no problem with, I actually think wrist locks are very reasonable if well trained. There are two ways to look at this. She starts to redirect and she brings his arm back toward him. That's not a good technique for two reasons. Is that fundamentally, a lock needs to be extended and then tightened so that you can actually align and tighten all the joints. A fundamental principle of locking is that you don't lock the joint. You use the joint to lock the body, to control the whole body. You find somebody that's good at locking, that person is going to be manipulated all the way from that wrist down into both feet. Everything in their structure is going to be locked up. That's effective locking. Bad locking looks at one joint. You can't manipulate somebody with just this. You've got to align everything in that person's body. That's not happening. And the way to do that is once you have that knife and you're stretched out, you need to keep that extension and that tension all the way, keep it tight to your body and manipulate it from that distance. This type of movement I've seen in certain types of like white crane and certain types of kung fu, but generally speaking, it would only make sense with a sword, probably something longer. And the idea is you start to bring it back in and you slice the person's throat, face, chest with their own weapon. Maybe, I mean, this is kind of scholarly, academic types of approaches. It's not street shit. So there's a lot of problems with this technique. Let me see if I've missed anything.
And then she's going to lock up my wrist.
So my wrist is going behind my shoulder.
Just going to twist it backwards. If that was a good lock, he'd be on the ground already. Oh, breaks the elbow with a knee, of course, and stomps
with the knee,
the heel,
and then strike.
and at no time
All right.
disarms him. Redirect, control, attack.
Grab the hand.
Number 4, take away. Control the weapon.
Come in.
Don't leave the weapon. Look,
To my elbow.
great. Let's say you magically break his elbow. Let's say you magically break his knee. He's still got the knife in his hand. He goes, slice your Achilles, stick you in the shin, stick you anywhere in the leg. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. Now let me play something here to show you how contrived this scenario is to begin with. Okay, I want to call this out, give credit where credit is due. It looks like the guy's name is Dean Lawler, AIM Academy. Okay, so what he's doing is he's setting his students up here, and this is smart, right? He gives the guy a chance to demonstrate his technique that he's learned comfortably in a comfortable setting. Don't get me wrong, I always have to say this, you still need to do drills and simulations. You got to do them. That's what develops neuromuscular efficiency. It's what develops confidence in the technique. It just, for most people, most of the time, it ignores the reality of high-stress performance, right? He's about to show you what this reality is like. This is fantastic.
If I attack this guy here,
He's attacking him.
let me just show you something. If I preempted and you're going to do a technique, so I'm going to stab you, and then you're going to do whatever you've learned to
Stab you,
Okay,
you're going to
don't feel like you're under
That's
pressure.
simple.
You have 50 people watching and a video camera. It's okay. So if I stab at him, this is go bang, and he's got me. Oh, good. That was very nice.
It was a good way to attack the attacking hand. It's a good redirect. Now we get
the
real.
fact is that it was a good technique, right? But you hurt my arm a little bit because you're a bit of a tough guy, aren't you?
That's right.
So what? You're a fucking smart ass. No, is that what you are? No. So what? You come here and think, well, I'm my fucking joke. Is that what you're doing?
No.
What are you making? What happened?
Got overwhelmed.
And that's what happens to you. Because that's a real confrontation.
Welcome to reality. So look, there is nothing. A lot of people think that what they've seen in the films, movies, these choreographed types of fight scenes where there's guns and knives and all this shit. Don't get me wrong. There are genuine badasses out there. And you'd probably never suspect the ones that are to be that tough. And I've trained with some of these guys, and I know some of these guys. And there are the real deals that will make shit look good, just like you've seen in the films, but they're few and far between. And the realities of self-defense at this proximity and the intensity, you should feel, you can even feel the energy in the room change watching a video of this guy step up to somebody else. And the aggression and the dynamism of the movement. You gonna lock that? I don't think so. This is a wholly different scenario. Now, it's possible, right? There's a rule that if you see a weapon or you feel the weapon and you are not cut and you are not dead, they are less likely to use it. Maybe. There's also a lot of sadistic fucks out there that like to mess with people before they run them through. So you never really know, right? But in the first video that we saw with this guy teaching, the woman to pull down, he said, you got to react faster. And you got to react instantly and start to do your defense. No, you don't. If you've got 1 or 2 decades in the game and you are not dramatically outweighed by your opponent, maybe, and you're alert and you're ready, maybe. Otherwise, you need time to assess. When somebody has a knife to your throat and you start to resist, your chances of getting cut go way, way up. And that's just real. So if you're a teacher and you're recommending to your student, you got to react fast. Well, in this scenario, the one where the guy is overwhelming you and steps in, yes, you got to react fast. You probably should have struck as soon as he got into you if you felt that aggression and you felt that escalation of the scene, even if you could see the weapon in his hand. Oh, sure, you strike first, fast, and hard, as Bruce Lee would say. But if you feel the weapon, neck, I've had guys that have felt the weapon in the kidneys at a bus stop, right? If you see it or feel it, breathe for a fucking second because you don't know what you're stepping into. And this, the woman I showed you, the first thing she did, she dropped. And I guarantee you, she doesn't have the strength to move his arm, but she has the strength to move her throat right into the blade. So, this is your option, right? Now, I want to look at one more scene. Okay, in this next one, this guy's a U.S. Marine, a cop. So he's seen the shit. He knows what's going on, right? His name is Sal. This is one of the best, these links are going to be below, not the bad videos, good videos. These links are going to be below. This guy has some of the best locking and controlling techniques I have ever seen. That doesn't mean he's the most technically fluent. I've trained with phenomenal technicians in Hapkido and Shina and some of these arts. Skill was extraordinary, but what he has that I don't think I've seen in real life before to this extent, his fluidity and his adaptability and his control. He's transitioning between different locks. He's moving with his opponent, constantly understanding that this isn't a one technique solves all. It's about a conversation that keeps going, especially when there's aggression. So the premise of this video, which is great, and you got to watch the whole thing. The whole thing, it's a fantastic video. I think the guy is in a Kali or a Eskrima, specialist that's attacking him, and then there's Sal who's defending. And the premise is looking at realities of self-defense. But so they have one thing that's great. They look at a few scenarios, but he says, but sometime in the next 20 minutes for the video, I'm going to stab you without you knowing. Or I'm going to try to attack you without you knowing. Now for most of us, we'd like to believe in the romance of martial arts and that, look, he's a trained guy, he's a Marine, he's a cop. He's going to mess this guy up, right? Let me play this clip.
I never hand the knife back to anybody. I let him pick it back up. That's the report. So now we're getting ready to go. Now, just okay, he got me one time.
I got you once.
He got me once.
I got you once. But
And
you did.
Fights move, we move.
Yeah.
I got cut once.
He got cut. Homeboy got cut. So look, he did everything right. I mean, this is a phenomenal thing to look at. Now, if you look at the rest of the video, you will see much, much cleaner scenarios and simulations. Phenomenal control. I mean, he's really a technical genius when it comes to this stuff in his application. I mean, it's mind-blowing for me. But you can see also that with his demeanor and his approach, this is a person that has used these techniques for real against real resisting opponents. There's not a doubt in my mind. I can see it in the way that he moves and the way that he postures. Because fighters carry that in them, right? This is not, a lot of times you see in the martial arts, you see the formal, the posturing and the long-range techniques. Real fighters, they cover the vitals. Techniques are closer, shorter, uglier, but his sensitivity and his manipulations, right on. Now, let me play this one more time. Okay, so he didn't know he was going to attack. He just started stabbing, stabbed 3 times.
That's the report. So now we're getting ready to go. Now, just
He gets an underhook. He gains head control, head and neck control, manipulates him to the ground, takes away the weapon.
I never hand the knife back to anyone.
Phenomenal, right? RCAT. Redirect, got himself out of line of fire, control, attack, he struck on the ground, take away. This couldn't be more textbook. Now,
He got me one time.
why this clip? Well, he got cut, people. This guy is clearly an expert. You don't have to take my word for it. I don't really care. I know what I'm looking at here, and I've trained with some of the best in the world. This guy knows his shit, and he got cut. Why? He got caught off guard, and the remainder of that sequence was him reacting to that scenario, right? And this is reality. This idea that somebody's going to come in, like we saw in the first video, I'm going to attack slowly with a knife to the midsection. Hya, pari, grab, manipulate, elbow break, knee strike. It's comical when we like look at it in comparison to the intensity of these engagements. So, look, lessons to take away. The number one thing that we need to realize about real self-defense, you cannot bottle it. It is complete chaos. It's complete chaos. We are looking at a master of his craft. He still got cut. If that cut was to a vital part of his body, he would have died just there. Learning martial arts, learning self-defense does not guarantee your survival or your success in those engagements. This requires constant training. It requires for years and years. I mean, you need to really treat this like a craft. I've had people that come into my workshops and are frustrated when techniques aren't working. And I've literally asked somebody before, well, the context was a basic wrist escape, which a lot of people are like, oh, well, who's going to grab a wrist? And why isn't it matters for a variety of reasons. Maybe I'll hit that in another video. But if you don't know how to escape a basic wrist grab, you don't understand grabs and you don't understand escapes. There are fundamental principles that are accessible through that very basic practice. And a lot of times you don't need to escalate things by striking or locking. You just need to remove yourself from a grip or a situation, right? A lot of applications for it. But I've had somebody and she was working on the technique and she's like, well, it doesn't work for me. So she started doing it another way. And I said, oh, well, what are you doing? And she's like, oh yeah, your way is not working. I was like, okay, how many times did you do it? Oh, maybe 8 or 10. Oh, 8 or 10. Okay, well, what are you doing now? Oh, no, I'm trying it this way. Okay, well, let's try. Grab her wrist. Couldn't move an inch. Go on, show the second, couldn't move an inch. Started to get really flustered, angry, and she in fact did not come back because she felt foolish. But you got to approach this stuff with humility and you got to be patient. Look, I asked her one question. Can you name one thing, anything in your entire life where somebody could enter a competitive environment, whether or not that person was the best or just the stakes were that high, and you could come in with 10 repetitions or even a few hours of practice and assume that you are going to handle yourself with somebody that this is not going to be their first time. The likelihood that somebody has not run simulations, is already thinking about it, mentally prepared, has some experience with a knife, if they're going to hold a knife to you, you think that you, after a few attempts, are going to be able to manage somebody. Pull, duck, extend, break. Not going to happen. And so 2 points. 1, simplicity wins out, always. If you're not willing to invest literally 2 decades in learning a comprehensive approach to manipulation, self-defense, then you got to go with the basics. Learn the foundations, right? And they're incorporated in this. Redirect, learn basic ways of reacting to stuff that weapon, to distance yourself from that weapon, control if you can, attack, take away. The takeaway part may or may not be relevant depending on all scenarios, but this is a basic framework, but the tools have to be basic. They got to be simple. The more complex they are, the more room for error. The second part, high stress training. In the third video that I showed you, the guy knifing the student, what that video goes on to show is simulations where they've got one person against the wall and then they're all working with partners and the other person is attacking them in this kind of a fashion. This is absolutely fantastic, absolutely relevant. You need to be putting yourself in situations that are unpredictable, unscripted, against aggressive opponents, hopefully with a rubber knife,
Shut your eyes.
Don't get cut. But yeah, you got to get that heart rate up. You got to see what happens when you start to get nervous and scared and attacked and overwhelmed. because your body changes. It changes in ways that most people can't really predict, but fine motor skills are the first thing that goes out the door. So if you've got a complex technique, a manipulation, like a wrist lock, something that requires fine motor skills to execute, and you are not highly trained, decades in, those techniques completely fall out of your arsenal, and you're left with very few. Something to consider. Cool, guys. I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little rant and exploration of knife self-defense. It's a fun topic. Any questions, please drop them in the comments. Any comments, drop them in the comments. And let me know if you got any other, curiosities or interests that you'd like me to look at. So until the next time, please like, subscribe, be weightless.